evening. On the 5th anniversary of the closure of the steelworks in Corby, we have a special report on how the town is recovering from that employment body blow. 5 years ago this month, British Steel closed their steelworks in Corby, throwing 6,000 people out of work and threatening the very survival of this virtual one-industry town. There were fears that unemployment would rise to 35 or even 40%. Within 6 months, Corby was declared a special development area, and in June '81, it became Britain's first enterprise zone.
Corby is a unique town, a small village until the 1920s, when the steelworks transformed it, and thousands of Scots came from depressed Clydeside in search of work. With the closure of the steelworks, Corby has had to start building jobs all over again.
Welcome to this press conference, the most important press conference, I think, since 1980, when the closure of steel was announced. Most important in terms of the old going away and the new coming in. In actual fact, it means that on this site, where the old steelworks stood, a new factory will be built. It means a great deal to the Corby people in psychological terms. But sir, we are delighted and very pleased that your company, belonging to the widest spectrum of Europe, that you've decided to come to Corby to put your industry and your roots down here.
Curver chairman Hans van Vliet said that the development will eventually lead to 250 new jobs, and went on to say,
it will be, compared to the old steelworkers site, an environmentalist dream. Clean, efficient, pleasing design, pollution-free, because plastics processing factories are no problem these days.
When it's operating by the end of next year, the factory will be the largest in Corby. It'll make plastic household products using British raw materials, and the company aims to use the plant as a base to make a bid to become the brand leader in the UK.
And I wish you all the very best. And welcome to Corby and the success of your firm, and to Corby also. Thank you very much. All the very best.
a few months later, it was rather a different picture. But when the weather cleared, the first steel arrived on site. Over the next few weeks, the £12 million factory's steel skeleton quickly took shape. By Easter, the massive new production facilities began to dominate the site and show the scale of Curver's enterprise. It was late in April that year when key staff from Curver's Coventry base first came to visit Corby and to see the rate of progress for themselves. A few months later, preparations had already begun to leave the cramped Coventry accommodation. Packing cases were stacked in every office, making working conditions even more confined.
We check and see whether they've got a booking for it.
In the old canteen, everyone discussed the move to Corby. Signs of the move were everywhere. And the stock from the Coventry warehouse had all been transferred to Corby. The showroom was almost unrecognizable, but work still went on.
Good afternoon, Heather. No, it's Kevin. I'm just getting in front. So it's terrible.
Everyone, from administration and marketing to the secretaries and computing staff, was affected. But the whole operation had been planned like a military maneuver. And soon Curver's Coventry staff were to see the last of the barges in the frozen canal. Meanwhile, back in Corby, the weather was just as bleak, but the pace of progress was quickening. As the finishing touches were added to the outside of the building, everything was ready inside for the arrival of the first injection molding machine. It was so large, it had to be transported in two halves. 2 cranes were required to unload the massive machinery. And each maneuver had to be carried out with delicacy and precision. The specialist Dutch machinery removal company had to unpack the first machine and then suspend it in mid-air while the truck drove away. The team even brought their own high-powered forklift truck to steer the machines on their few hundred yards journey to their final resting place. Each maneuver was minutely directed. Now it was time for the second half of the machine to be unloaded, as the first section was eased into the new factory. These vast open spaces would soon be filled with 10 advanced computer-controlled injection molders, working 24 hours a day, every day of the week. Outside, more precision control was required, as the machine, which exerts a pressure of 500 tons, was gently lowered towards the factory door and placed on its rollers. Slowly but surely, it was maneuvered into place for final assembly on site. Meanwhile, the Curver name had already taken shape. The shell of the office block was complete, and the new loading bays were already in use, as stock from the Coventry warehouse was loaded and distributed all over the country. Inside, final adjustments were being made, and soon the first high-tech machine had been assembled. In every section of the factory, work was advancing well, and things were beginning to take shape. setbacks in the completion of the office block were not allowed to interfere with the rigid schedule, and a unique village had sprung up in Corby. Its occupants became increasingly familiar with the ever more frequent deliveries of the vital machines that would soon transform an empty shell into one of the most modern plastics manufacturing plants in the world. The largest robotic injection moulder was this machine, which exerts 800 tons pressure. Again, the same principles of precision unloading followed. And everyone breathed a sigh of relief when it had been gently guided into position for placing on its rollers. By now, Curver was already producing its products as the final machines were unloaded and maneuvered into position to join the production line. Each one was given the same degree of care and attention. By late summer, the factory was in full production. Each department had settled in its spacious modern offices.
Hiya. When are we going to clean through these?
There was a friendly atmosphere in the bright, purpose-built offices where good use is made of foliage.
That before Miss White find out what he really wants. And then we have to make sure that it's going to be there in time, because I will not be able to go myself. Yes? Okay, fine. Thanks very much, Bye.
What I suggest with that then, Jeff, right, you've got to split the country.
Yeah.
You're going next year from 4 sales execs to 5.
Fine.
Right, with their mobile starting sometime around about May time.
It is to be made, is it?
Yeah.
The new facilities are rounded off by an immaculate self-service canteen. Eventually, the great day came when His Royal Highness, the Duke of Gloucester, was to officially open the new Curver factory. The spacious showroom was to be used for the VIP reception. Strong winds were blowing as one of the familiar red helicopters of the Queen's flight descended on the specially built helipad next to Curver Way. welcomed by the Lord Lieutenant of Northamptonshire. And escorted to Curver's new home, where he was greeted by Chairman Hans van Vliet.
Hi, Sherry. John Mr. Hall is the Chief Executive of Corby and his wife, William Powell. Now I'm going to ask you, sir, to take on and introduce.
Mr. Berg, you take the Vice President of ESM. Mr. Arts, the Managing Director of our here, and Ms. Arts.
After the formal introductions, the party moved into the new showroom.
Yes, then you'll be able to get a
Very smart helicopter pad. That provided specially for me. Do you use them all the time? For you.
Were you nearly fooled by those advertisements for going to Wales with all the Welshmen singing away?
We have been looking at several.
But they got the best deal here.
Because Corby isn't known for singing. Now, this is Councillor Glendenning and Mrs. Glendenning. And Councillor Glendenning has had a major part in, he's been the leader of the Corby Council, and right the way through the ringing industry, he's the one that's been... So you're the one who goes out and hustles the business?
Well, with a team.
After the reception, the Duke's party joined the other guests for lunch in the specially erected marquee. During the Duke's tour of the new 200,000 square foot plant, he showed considerable interest in the company's products.
How many potties have you been using here?
A lot. I think that we tend to go about 100,000.
How many babies are imported here?
There are about 600,000 babies.
600,000. So 1 in 6 babies.
After the tour, the Duke was to unveil a specially commissioned sculpture made in plastic and steel, a symbol of the link between the old and the new.
We are extremely honored and delighted to have here today His Royal Highness the Duke of Gloucester, and I would like to thank him warmly for officiating at this historic event. For me, the opening of these premises marks the fulfillment of 5 years' endeavor. But it is the beginning, not the end. The building you see here is an investment not only in Curver's future, but also in the future of Corby. And I would like now to call upon His Highness to mark the official opening of Curver Consumer Products Limited production and marketing facilities by unveiling this structure, this sculpture, and by saying a few words.
Gives me very great pleasure to come to Corby again and to join you on this day of celebration. This new factory here is a symbol of the fact that Corby is no longer dependent on steel, but has managed to replace the steel factory with a number of different factories and different undertakings here in Corby. And today is a day for congratulating all those who've worked so hard to bring employment, to bring factories, to bring business to Corby so that it can continue as a viable town. And it is a great pleasure for me to come here today and to mark the creation of this factory, to look forward to all the products that it's going to make. They're all splendidly understandable products that we see in our houses, everything from buckets, waste paper baskets, even babies' potties. And I'm sure that many people will have reason to be grateful for this factory being here, whether they know of its existence or not. And it is also a pleasure to mark this occasion by being invited to unveil a sculpture. And so it gives me great pleasure to unveil this for the benefit of the people of Corby and also for your many customers all over the world. Thank you. Do I just pull? Can I tap it?
Yes, you can.
The Duke discussed the finer points of the sculpture's construction with sculptor Wendy Taylor.
It's not like Sydney Opera.
After his farewells, the Duke took to the skies again. While inside the new plant, work went on.
Good afternoon, Kerber.
Production continued into the night and marked that Curver really had come to Corby.